The frozen winds of Kepler 442b howled across the endless ice plains as Dr. Lee Hanna stepped out of the research shuttle. Her breath formed clouds in the bitter air despite her protective suit's heating system. The planet stretched before her team like a white desert that had never known warmth. Hanna pulled her scanner from her belt and watched the display flicker with readings. This was their third day on the ice world, and so far they had found nothing but frozen water and rock. The mission parameters were simple. Survey the planet, look for signs of past life, document everything. Behind her, Kim Dae-ho was setting up the communication array. The tall man worked quickly despite the thick gloves that made his fingers clumsy. Every few minutes he would look up at the pale sky and shake his head. The storms on this planet could cut off contact with their ship for days. Park Min-seo knelt beside a chunk of ice that rose from the ground like a twisted tree. She scraped samples into small containers and labeled each one carefully. The geologist had been excited when they first landed. Ice worlds often held secrets in their frozen layers, stories of ancient climates and forgotten atmospheres. Hanna walked toward a ridge that jutted up from the plain. Her boots crunched on the hard snow with each step. The sound seemed too loud in the thin air. According to their orbital scans, this area showed unusual mineral deposits, something different from the rest of the planet. The ridge was taller than it looked from a distance. Hanna had to climb carefully up the slippery slope. Her suit's sensors beeped softly as she moved. Temperature readings, atmospheric pressure, radiation levels, all normal for this frozen world. At the top of the ridge, Hanna stopped and stared. Below her, the ice was different. Instead of the rough white surface they had seen everywhere else, this area was smooth, almost like glass. And beneath the clear ice, she could see shapes. Dark forms that looked too regular to be natural. Hanna activated her comm unit. Dae-ho, Min-seo, you need to see this. The other two made their way up the ridge. Min-seo arrived first and let out a low whistle when she saw the ice formations below. Dae-ho took longer. He carried his portable scanner and was breathing hard by the time he reached the top. What do you think those are? Dae-ho asked. He pointed at the dark shapes under the ice. Min-seo was already sliding down toward the formations. Only one way to find out, she called back. The three researchers stood at the edge of the smooth ice. The formations beneath were definitely not natural. They had straight lines and curved surfaces. Some looked like they might be buildings. Others were harder to identify. Hanna knelt and placed her hand on the ice. It was cold even through her glove. But there was something else. A faint vibration, like a heartbeat but much slower, much deeper. Are you getting any readings? She asked Dae-ho. He was running his scanner over the ice surface. The device beeped and chirped as it analyzed the frozen water. The ice is old. Really old? Maybe thousands of years. But there's something underneath. Something that's giving off a very faint electromagnetic signal. Min-seo had her drill ready. We need samples from deeper down. This surface ice might just be the top layer. The drill whined as it bit into the hard ice. Chunks of frozen water scattered around their feet. Min-seo worked steadily until she had made a hole about 3 feet deep. She switched to a thinner bit and kept drilling. At 6 feet, the drill hit something hard. Not rock, something else. There's a barrier here, Min-seo said. It's not ice and it's not stone. The drill won't go through. Hanna moved closer to the hole. She could see a faint blue glow coming from the bottom. Very faint, like starlight through water. That's not natural, Dae-ho said. His scanner was going crazy. The readings jumped and flickered across the display. I'm getting massive electromagnetic activity down there. Whatever is under this ice, it's still active. Hanna made a decision that would change everything. She pulled off her glove and knelt beside the hole. Before the others could stop her, she reached down and placed her bare hand on the blue surface at the bottom. The moment her skin touched the barrier, everything changed. The blue glow spread outward from where she touched, not just in the hole but across the entire ice field. Lines of light raced beneath the frozen surface like veins of pure energy. The dark shapes under the ice began to glow as well. What had looked like ancient ruins now blazed with soft blue radiance. Hanna gasped, not from the cold but from something else. A presence, ancient and vast and utterly alien. It was like touching the mind of a sleeping giant. For just a moment she felt something stir in the depths, something that had been waiting for a very long time. The glow faded but did not disappear completely. A soft blue light continued to pulse beneath the ice like a slow heartbeat. Hanna, Min-seo whispered. Your hand. Hana looked down. Her skin was unmarked by the cold. No frostbite. No damage at all. Instead, there was a faint blue glow under her palm. The same color as the light beneath the ice. Daeho's scanner was screaming now. The electromagnetic readings were off the charts. "Something's waking up down there," he said. His voice was tight with excitement and fear. "The energy levels are increasing by the minute." Deep beneath the ice, something that had slept for 3,000 years felt the touch of a curious mind. A mind that reached out not with greed or fear, but with wonder. For the first time since the great cold had come to her world, the ancient dragon known as Thyroleth began to stir. The ice around them creaked and groaned, as if the planet itself was stretching after a long sleep. In the distance, they could hear the sound of shifting ice. Cracks appeared in the smooth surface and more blue light seeped through. Hana pulled her hand back and stared at the glowing lines that now covered her palm. She could feel something. Not pain, but a connection, like a thread that stretched down through the ice to whatever lay beneath. "We need to contact the ship," she said. Her voice was steady, but her heart was racing. "I think we just made first contact." The three humans stood on the ridge and watched as the ice plain below them came alive with light. Ancient patterns blazed beneath the frozen surface, geometric designs that spoke of intelligence and purpose, of a civilization that had chosen sleep over death. Far below the surface, the dragon's great eyes opened for the first time in millennia. She had felt the touch of something new, something that burned with curiosity instead of conquest, something that might finally be worthy of trust. The age of silence was ending. 3 miles beneath the ice, the ancient dragon Thyroleth felt consciousness return like a tide rolling over dry sand. For 3,000 years she had drifted in the dreamless void between sleep and death. Now something had touched her world with warmth and wonder. Her massive form lay coiled in a chamber of crystal and stone. Ice had formed around her scales, turning her into a living sculpture. But the cold that had claimed her world could not claim her. She was a being of fire and thought and will. The ice was just another kind of blanket. Thyroleth opened one great eye. The chamber blazed with sudden light as her iris caught and reflected the blue glow that pulsed through the ice above. She had been dreaming of the old days, of warm skies and green forests, of her people soaring between the stars like living ships, all gone now. She was the last. The dragon tested her limbs carefully. Her wings were stiff from the long sleep, but they still worked. Her claws scraped against stone as she stretched. The sound echoed through the frozen tunnels that honeycombed the planet's crust. But what was this new feeling? This strange warmth that had pulled her from sleep? Thyroleth reached out with her mind and touched the source. 3 small creatures on the surface, so different from anything she had known. Their thoughts burned like tiny stars, quick and bright and full of questions. One of them had actually touched the barrier that sealed her chamber. Touched it without fear. The dragon probed deeper into that mind and found something that surprised her. Wonder. Pure curiosity. The creature had reached out not to take or destroy, but to understand. When was the last time anyone had approached her world with such innocent purpose? The machine armies that had frozen her planet certainly had no such thoughts. They knew only hunger and the need to consume. Above her, the 3 creatures were talking in rapid bursts. Thyroleth listened to their strange language and slowly began to understand the patterns. Language was just another form of thought. And thought was something she knew well. The one called Hana still carried traces of the connection. The dragon could feel the warmth of the human's mind like an echo in her own thoughts. Such a small creature, but so full of life, so determined to learn and explore. Thyroleth began to move through her chamber. Ice cracked and fell away from her scales as she uncoiled her massive body. The chamber had been carved from living rock eons ago. Her ancestors had built it as a refuge, a place to wait out the darkness until better times returned. She had not expected the wait to be so long. The dragon made her way to the great viewing crystal that dominated one wall of the chamber. With a thought, she activated the ancient device. Light flowed through the crystal, showing her the surface of her world. Everything was white. The forests were gone. The cities were buried. The great rivers that had carved valleys through the continents were frozen solid. Only ice and stone and the thin atmosphere that barely held warmth from the distant star. But there were new things as well. A metal ship resting on the ice. The 3 small beings with their strange tools and bright thoughts. They had come from somewhere else. Another world under another sun. Thyroleth reached out with her senses and found more of them. Hundreds of the creatures living on a ship in orbit around her world. She touched their thoughts briefly and pulled back in amazement. They called themselves humans. And they were explorers. For 3,000 years nothing had visited this system. Nothing had cared about a frozen world circling a dying star. But these humans had come anyway. They had traveled impossible distances just to see what was here. Just to learn. The dragon felt something she had not experienced in millennia. Hope. She moved to another crystal and activated the deep sensors. The readings were disturbing. The energy signatures of machine fleets moving through distant space. The harvesters were still out there. Still consuming worlds and turning living planets into lifeless factories. They had missed this system during their last sweep because there was nothing here worth taking. But if they detected signs of new life, they would return. They would come to finish what they had started so long ago. Theralith could not allow that. These humans had shown her something precious. They had proven that wonder and curiosity still existed in the galaxy. That exploration and discovery could still drive thinking beings to cross the void between stars. The dragon began to wake the deeper systems of her chamber. Crystals that had been dark for centuries began to glow. Ancient machines hummed to life. The technology of her people had been built to last through ages. Most of it still worked. She activated the surface scanners and studied the humans more carefully. Their bodies were small and fragile. They could not survive in space without artificial protection. Their lifespans were incredibly short compared to her own. But their minds were remarkable. They adapted to new situations with amazing speed. They worked together despite their individual differences. They faced the unknown with tools and determination, and an endless desire to understand. The one called Hana was still connected to her through the touch they had shared. Theralith could feel the human's thoughts like whispers at the edge of her consciousness. Fear and excitement mixed together, questions tumbling over each other as the small creature tried to understand what was happening. The dragon made a decision that would change both their species forever. Instead of simply observing, she reached out across the connection, gently, carefully. She did not want to damage the fragile human mind. On the surface, Hana suddenly stopped talking. Her companions called her name, but she did not respond. Her eyes had rolled back and she was seeing something else, something impossible. Through the connection, Hana saw the chamber deep beneath the ice. She saw the massive form of Theralith moving among crystals that blazed with inner light. She felt the dragon's ancient mind touch hers with infinite care. Images flooded through the link. The world as it had been before the ice. Forests of silver trees reaching toward purple skies. Cities that floated on streams of controlled gravity. Dragons soaring between the stars with their wings spread wide against the cosmic dark. And then the machines. The harvesters arriving like a plague of metal locusts. The desperate war that followed. The decision to freeze the world rather than let it be consumed. The long sleep that followed, Hana understood now. The being beneath the ice was not just alive. It was ancient beyond human imagining. It had seen civilizations rise and fall. It had fought battles across star systems. And it had chosen to sleep rather than die when all seemed lost. The connection lasted only seconds, but it changed everything. When Hana's eyes focused again, she looked at her companions with new understanding. "We need to get back to the ship," she said. Her voice was steady but different somehow. Older. "We need to prepare. Something is coming and we're going to need help to face it." Deep below, the dragon smiled, a terrible expression on such a massive face. The humans could not know it yet, but they had just gained an ally in a war that had raged for millennia. The ice around Theralith's chamber began to crack as she prepared to rise. The shuttle ride back to the orbiting research vessel felt different to Hana. Every few minutes she would touch the spot on her palm where the blue glow still pulsed softly under her skin. The connection to the being beneath the ice had not broken. If anything, it was getting stronger. Deho sat across from her monitoring his instruments. The electromagnetic readings from the planet were increasing every hour. Whatever was down there was becoming more active. His equipment registered massive power fluctuations coming from deep beneath the surface. Minseo packed her ice samples carefully in the shuttle's storage compartment. She had been quiet since witnessing Hana's strange episode on the ice. The geologist kept glancing at her colleague with worried eyes. Something fundamental had changed in those few seconds when Hana's eyes had rolled back. Captain Jun Wusung met them at the shuttle bay. The ship's commander was a practical man who did not believe in taking unnecessary risks. When Hana's preliminary report reached him, he had immediately ordered the team back to the ship. "Tell me exactly what happened down there," he said as they walked toward the briefing room. Hana struggled to find words for what she had experienced. How could she explain touching the mind of a creature that had lived for thousands of years? How could she describe the visions of a world before ice? The memories of war against machines that consumed entire star systems? "We made contact with something ancient," she said finally. "Something that has been waiting for a very long time." The briefing room's main screen showed the ice planet turning slowly below them. Thermal scans revealed the growing energy signatures that Daeho's equipment had detected. Lines of power were spreading through the planet's crust like a vast nervous system coming alive. Captain Wusung studied the readings with growing concern. "These energy levels are beyond anything in our database. If whatever's down there decides to become hostile, we wouldn't stand a chance." Hana shook her head. "It's not hostile. It's curious about us, the same way we're curious about it." Before anyone could respond, the lights in the briefing room dimmed. The main screen flickered and went black. Then slowly a new image appeared. Not from their cameras, but from somewhere else entirely. They were looking at themselves through alien eyes. The view showed the briefing room from impossible angles, as if the observer could see through walls and around corners at the same time. The perspective shifted and suddenly they were looking at the entire ship from the outside. Then the view pulled back further, showing the planet and the ship as tiny dots against the stars. A voice spoke in their minds. Not through their ears, but directly into their thoughts. The words formed in their own language, but carried undertones of something far older and more complex. "I am Thiroleth. I am the last of my kind. I have been sleeping in the ice while your species learned to reach for the stars." Captain Wusung reached for his weapon but stopped when Hana placed a hand on his arm. The blue glow under her palm had spread up her wrist and was pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. "She means no harm," Hana said, though she was not sure how she knew this. The knowledge came through the connection like water flowing downstream. The voice continued. "Your people are young, but you carry something precious. You explore not to conquer, but to understand. This is rare in the galaxy. This is why I choose to trust you." The screen changed again. Now they were seeing memories from the dragon's past. A world of incredible beauty where crystalline cities reached toward purple skies. Beings that looked like living legends soaring between floating islands on wings that caught starlight. This was my world before the machines came, before the harvesters found us. The images shifted and became darker. Mechanical shapes blotting out the sun. Cities falling to weapons that turned matter into energy. The desperate flight of survivors toward the stars. The final decision to freeze the world rather than lose it completely. The harvesters consume everything organic. They turn living worlds into factories for making more of themselves. We fought them across a dozen star systems and lost each time. In the end, we had only one choice. Sleep and wait for something better to find us. Captain Wusung had gone pale. "How many of these harvesters are there?" "Millions. They spread across the galaxy like a plague. Most organic species fall within days of first contact. You humans would last longer than most, but you would still fall eventually." Daeho checked his instruments again. The readings were off the scale now. Something's happening on the surface. Major geological activity. Through the ship's windows they could see the ice planet changing. Cracks of blue light spread across the frozen continents. Steam rose from the surface as ancient heating systems came online for the first time in millennia. The planet was waking up. "I am rising," Theroleth's voice said in their minds. "The time for sleeping is over. Your people have shown me that hope still exists. That curiosity and wonder can still drive beings to cross the void between worlds." Hana felt the connection with the dragon growing stronger. Images flowed between their minds like water finding its level. She saw herself through Thiroleth's ancient eyes. A small brave creature reaching out to touch the unknown. A being whose brief life burned with the desire to learn and explore. In return, she shared her own memories. Growing up on Earth under open skies. Her first glimpse of the stars through a telescope. The day she decided to become an explorer. The long journey to this frozen world and the moment she placed her hand on the ice. The exchange created something new. Not human and not dragon, but a bridge between two very different kinds of consciousness. Hana could feel her mind expanding to hold memories that stretched across centuries. At the same time, she sensed Thiroleth experiencing human emotions for the first time. Wonder and curiosity and the fierce joy of discovery. "This is remarkable," The dragon's voice carried notes of amazement. Your thoughts are so quick, so adaptable. You process new information and reach conclusions faster than any species I have known. And you do it all in such a brief span of years. Captain Wusung was trying to maintain military protocol, but the situation had moved far beyond normal procedures. What do you want from us? Partnership, Therilith replied immediately. The harvesters are moving again. My awakening will have sent signals across space. They will come to finish what they started long ago. When they arrive, they will find not just a sleeping world, but a new alliance. The planet below them was transforming rapidly now. The ice was melting in controlled patterns, revealing structures that had been hidden for millennia. Towers of crystal and metal rose from the warming ground. Landing platforms extended toward space like welcoming arms. Your technology and mine together might be enough to face them. Your adaptability combined with my knowledge. Your brief, bright lives merged with my deep memory. We can create something neither of our species could achieve alone. Hana stood up from the briefing table. The blue glow had spread up her arm now and was beginning to trace patterns under her skin. She felt no pain, only a growing sense of connection to something vast and ancient and wise. I volunteer, she said simply. Whatever this partnership requires, I'm ready. Through the expanding link, she felt Therileth's approval like warm sunlight. The dragon had chosen well. This small human burned with the same fire that had once driven her people to the stars. The same refusal to surrender in the face of impossible odds. The alliance between human and dragon was beginning. The first Harvester scout ship materialized at the edge of the star system 3 days after Therilith began her rise from the ice. It was a dark wedge of metal and circuitry that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. Silent and patient, it began scanning the inner planets for signs of the energy surge that had awakened it from standby. Captain Wusung stood on the bridge of the research vessel watching long range. Sensors tracked the alien craft. His crew worked frantically to analyze the readings, but their instruments could barely detect the scout ship. Its technology was far beyond anything humanity had encountered. Distance? He asked his sensor operator. 40 million kilometers and closing. It's not using any propulsion system we recognize. No energy signature at all until it moves. Through the growing psychic link, Hana felt Therileth's ancient fear stir like cold wind. The dragon had been sharing memories with her for 3 days now, showing her the history of the war that had frozen this world. The scout ships had always come first. They're testing us, Hana said from her position at the communication station. The blue patterns under her skin pulsed brighter, as the connection with Therileth strengthened, trying to determine if we're a threat worth the effort of a full assault. The planet below had changed dramatically. The ice was gone from vast areas, revealing cities that gleamed like jewels against the dark stone. Therileth herself had emerged from her deep chamber, and now rested in a crystal spire that rose 10 kilometers into the thin atmosphere. From space, she looked like a living mountain. Her scales caught and reflected the blue glow of the awakening technology around her. Her wings were folded but still spanned several kilometers. When she moved, the ground trembled and ancient machines hummed to life. Can she fight that thing? Captain Wusung asked. Hana closed her eyes and reached deeper into the link. Through Therileth's senses, she could perceive the scout ship clearly. It was not just a machine, but a corrupted fusion of organic and artificial components. The original builders had been a species much like dragons, proud and powerful and convinced of their own superiority. They had chosen mechanical perfection over biological adaptation. Slowly, they had replaced their living parts with artificial ones. First their limbs, then their organs, finally their minds. What remained was technically immortal but no longer truly alive. She's fought them before, Hana said, but not alone. Her people were powerful, but the harvesters had numbers, millions of ships, billions of individual units. They consumed everything in their path. The scout ship moved closer to the inner system. Its scans were becoming more focused, more intrusive. It was studying both the awakening dragon world and the human vessel with cold mechanical interest. Deho worked frantically at his station trying to learn everything he could about harvester technology from the sensor readings. The patterns were unlike anything in human databases. The ship seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time. It could move without visible propulsion, and its hull absorbed electromagnetic radiation across the entire spectrum. They're not just machines, he reported. These readings suggest some kind of hybrid technology, part mechanical and part something else, something that was once biological. Through the link, Theralith shared more memories. The early battles when her people had still believed they could win. Dragonfire that could melt starship hulls met weapons that turned matter into pure energy. Ancient psychic powers that could reach across space were countered by technological shields that blocked all mental contact. The Harvesters had learned from every encounter. Each battle made them stronger while the dragons grew fewer. They adapted faster than any organic species could evolve. They incorporated the technology and biology of conquered worlds into their own systems. That's how they work, Hana explained as understanding flowed through the psychic connection. They don't just destroy civilizations, they absorb them. Every species they encounter makes them more powerful, more adaptable. Captain Wusung checked the weapons status of his research vessel. They had some defensive systems, but nothing designed for combat with alien technology. How long before it reports back to the main fleet? It won't report. Theralith's voice spoke in all their minds simultaneously. It will return with samples and data. The main fleet will follow within days. The dragon began to move within her crystal spire. Ancient systems that had slept for millennia responded to her will. The entire planet began to glow brighter as power flowed through circuits built from living crystal and metal that had been grown rather than forged. What are you doing? Hana asked through the mental link. Preparing for war. But this time will be different. This time I have allies who understand adaptation. Weapons platforms rose from the planet's surface like flowers blooming in fast motion. But they were not the same weapons that had failed against the Harvesters 3,000 years ago. These had been redesigned during the long sleep. They incorporated principles that Theralith had learned from observing human technology, flexibility instead of absolute power, adaptability instead of perfection, the ability to change tactics faster than any purely mechanical system could counter. The scout ship detected the rising weapon platforms and began to take evasive action. But something was wrong with its calculations. The weapons were not targeting where it was, but where it was going to be. They anticipated its movements before it made them. Impossible, Diho breathed as he watched his sensors track the engagement. Those weapons are predicting the future. Through the link, Hana understood what was happening. Theralith was not just controlling the planetary defenses. She was sharing her consciousness with them. The weapons were guided by intuition and creativity rather than pure logic. They could adapt and improvise in ways that no mechanical system could match. The first energy blast caught the scout ship as it tried to jump to faster than light speed. The harvester vessel staggered as its hull absorbed damage it had not expected to receive. Its adaptive systems began analyzing the attack to develop countermeasures. But the second blast was completely different. And the third used principles the first two had not even hinted at. Each shot adapted to counter the ship's defensive responses. The weapons learned faster than their target could evolve. The scout ship realized it was outmatched and began broadcasting a desperate signal toward the outer system. It was trying to warn the main fleet about this new threat, about weapons that could think and adapt and learn. But Theralith had anticipated this as well. Jamming fields powered by psychic energy rather than technology blocked the transmission. The scout ship's signal was absorbed and scattered before it could reach deep space. The final weapon blast tore through the harvester scout like paper. The alien ship broke apart in a shower of metal and circuitry, but even as it died, its systems were recording everything, analyzing the weapons that had destroyed it, learning for the next encounter. That was just the beginning, Theralith warned through the mental link. The scout carried quantum recorders. Even destroyed, its data will find a way back to the main fleet. They will know about our weapons now. They will adapt. Captain Wusung watched the debris field that had been an alien warship scatter across space. How long do we have? Days, maybe hours. The harvesters do not waste time with lengthy preparations. When they decide a world is worth taking, they move immediately. Hana felt the dragon's ancient determination flowing through their connection. But there was something else now. Something that had not existed during the First War 3,000 years ago. Hope mixed with desperate calculation. You have a plan, she said. I have the beginning of one, but it will require trust between our species. Complete cooperation. Your people must be willing to link their minds with mine the way you have done. The implications hit everyone on the bridge simultaneously. Theralith was not just offering an alliance. She was proposing a merging of human and dragon consciousness, a fusion of biological intuition and technological innovation that might be powerful enough to face the harvesters on equal terms. Would it work? Captain Wusung asked. Through the psychic link, Hana felt Theraleth's honest uncertainty. I do not know. It has never been attempted before. But your species has something mine lost long ago. The ability to adapt quickly to new situations, to find creative solutions to impossible problems. Combined with our power and knowledge, it might be enough. The first fragments of hyperspace distortion began to register on the long-range sensors. The Harvester fleet was coming. In less than 12 hours, this quiet star system would become a battleground in a war that had raged across the galaxy for millennia. But this time, the outcome might be different. This time, the Harvesters would face something they had never encountered before. The combined will and creativity of two species working as one. The volunteer process began within hours of detecting the approaching Harvester fleet. Hana stood in the ship's main assembly bay addressing 200 crew members who had agreed to attempt the unprecedented psychic linking with Theraleth. We don't know exactly what will happen, she told them honestly. The blue glow under her skin had spread to cover most of her exposed arms and was beginning to trace patterns across her face. The connection with Theraleth is unlike anything humans have experienced before. It may change us in ways we can't predict. Captain Wusung watched from the observation deck as his crew prepared for the most dangerous experiment in human history. Half of them were terrified. The other half were excited beyond measure. All of them understood that their world's survival might depend on what happened in the next few hours. Diho had worked with Theraleth to design the linking chambers. They were simple affairs. Crystal formations grown from the planet's surface and transported to the ship. Each one resonated with the same frequency as the dragon's consciousness. Volunteers would place their hands on the crystals and open their minds to the ancient presence below. The first volunteer was Park Minseo. The geologist had been studying the crystal formations since their return from the surface. She understood their structure better than anyone except Theraleth herself. Are you ready? Hana asked through the ship's communication system. Minseo nodded and placed both palms on the glowing crystal. For a moment nothing happened. Then her eyes widened as the connection formed. Through the link, Hana felt her friend's consciousness touch the vast mind of the dragon. The experience was overwhelming at first. Minseo's thoughts scattered like leaves in a windstorm, as memories from across millennia flooded through her awareness. But slowly she began to find her balance. Human adaptability helped her adjust to the alien perspective. I can see the whole star system, Minseo whispered. Her voice carried harmonics that had not been there before. Deeper tones that suggested vast spaces and ancient wisdom. Everything is connected. The planets, the ships, even empty space has patterns. One by one, the other volunteers made their connections. Each link was unique. Some crew members merged easily with Theraleth's consciousness. Others struggled to maintain their individual identity while sharing thoughts with a being that had existed for thousands of years. Lieutenant Kim Young-ho was a pilot from the ship's small fighter squadron. When he touched the crystal, his consciousness flowed into Theraleth's awareness like water, finding the sea. Through the link, he felt the dragon's surprise at how naturally he adapted to her flight. Patterns and spatial reasoning. This is incredible, he said, as his fighter's systems began responding to thoughts, rather than manual controls. I can feel the gravitational currents between planets, the magnetic fields. It's like swimming through three-dimensional water. Engineer Song Minji had always been good with complex systems. When she linked with Theraleth, her understanding of technology expanded exponentially. Ancient dragon science merged with human innovation in her mind. She began designing weapons and defenses that neither species could have imagined alone. We can do this, she reported as blueprints flowed through her enhanced consciousness. Human manufacturing techniques combined with dragon power sources. We can build things that adapt faster than the harvesters can counter them. But the linking process was not without risks. 2 volunteers had to be disconnected when their minds could not handle the merger. One suffered temporary memory loss. Another began speaking in the ancient dragon language and could not remember human words for several hours. Dr. Hana remained the primary link between the 2 species. Through her consciousness, Theraleth coordinated the growing network of human-dragon hybrid minds. The process was exhausting but exhilarating. She could feel her awareness expanding to encompass perspectives she had never imagined possible. The fleet approaches, Theraleth announced through all the linked minds simultaneously. 47 capital ships, 300 support vessels, approximately 1 million individual combat units. Through the enhanced sensors of the linked pilots, the crew could perceive the Harvester fleet more clearly than any human instrument could detect them. The ships were not just machines, but living constructs. Metal and flesh fused into forms that served pure function, without regard for aesthetics or comfort. The largest vessels were former dreadnoughts from species the Harvesters had conquered centuries ago. But they had been rebuilt and enhanced with technology from dozens of different civilizations. They were living museums of galactic warfare, beautiful and terrible at the same time. They're jamming all communications, reported Communications Officer Li Jiwan through her psychic link. But they can't block the Dragon connection. We can coordinate our forces without using any technology they can detect or interfere with. The human research vessel had been joined by 2 more ships from the exploration fleet. Combined, they carried fewer than 1,000 people total. Against 1 million Harvester units, the odds seemed impossible. But the alliance was not depending on numbers. As the volunteers completed their linking process, something unprecedented began to happen. Individual human creativity merged with dragon power and wisdom to create hybrid consciousness that transcended both species. Engineer Song Minji, working through Therolith's ancient knowledge, designed weapons that could reshape themselves during combat. Pilot Kim Young-ho gained the ability to navigate through hyperspace using intuition rather than instruments. Geologist Park Min-seo learned to manipulate gravity and magnetic fields through direct mental contact. We're becoming something new, Hana realized as she felt the network of linked minds stabilize into a coherent whole. Not human and not dragon, but a fusion of both. The first Harvester ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Immediately, they began scanning for threats and analyzing the energy signatures coming from the awakened planet. Their mechanical minds processed the data with cold efficiency. What they found confused their programming. The energy patterns were familiar. Dragon technology from the species they had defeated 3,000 years ago, but there were new elements as well. Innovations they had not encountered before. The Harvester fleet adjusted its approach. Instead of the overwhelming assault they had planned, they began a careful advance. Probe ships moved ahead of the main force, gathering detailed intelligence about the defenses they would face. But Therolith had learned from the previous war. The weapons platforms rising from the planet's surface were not fixed installations, but mobile systems that could relocate instantly. When the probe ships targeted them, they simply vanished and reappeared somewhere else. They're adapting to our old tactics, the Dragon warned through the psychic network, but they have not yet encountered our new capabilities. The hybrid human-dragon fighters launched from the 3 exploration ships, only 12 small craft against the approaching armada. But each one was piloted by a consciousness that combined human adaptability with dragon power. They moved through space like living things rather than mechanical constructs. Lieutenant Kim Young-ho led the first attack run. His fighter phased through the Harvester defensive screens as if they did not exist. The weapons he fired adapted their targeting in mid-flight, missiles that learned and evolved as they flew toward their targets. The Harvester ships found their defensive systems countered by weapons that refused to follow predictable patterns. Their adaptive algorithms struggled to develop countermeasures against attacks that changed their fundamental nature with each shot. It's working. Engineer Song Minji reported from her position coordinating the planetary defenses. They can't adapt fast enough. Our systems are changing faster than their mechanical minds can process. But the Harvesters had not survived for millennia by giving up easily. The main fleet began deploying weapons of last resort. Planet killers that could crack worlds like eggs, devices that turned stars into bombs. They would rather destroy everything than let it escape, Therolith observed with ancient sadness. This is why so many species chose extinction over surrender. The Harvesters offer no middle ground. Through the psychic network, Hana felt the determination of her linked crewmates. They had tasted something incredible in the merger with dragon consciousness, the possibility of transcending the limitations that had always defined humanity. None of them were willing to surrender that gift. The real battle was about to begin. The battle for the Dragon world lasted 18 hours and changed the nature of warfare across the galaxy forever. When the last Harvester ship either fled or was destroyed, the silence that followed was not empty but full of potential. Hana stood on the observation deck of the research vessel and looked down at the planet that had become something entirely new. The ice was completely gone now, replaced by gleaming cities that stretched from pole to pole. But these were not the ruins of an ancient civilization restored. They were something unprecedented. Human engineering merged with dragon architecture created structures that seemed to grow rather than be built. Crystalline spires reached toward space while flowing organic shapes provided living spaces for both species. Gardens floated in the air supported by controlled gravity fields. Rivers of pure energy flowed between buildings like luminous arteries. The integration is complete. Dr. Park Minseo reported through the psychic network that now connected over 3,000 volunteers from both species. Her consciousness carried traces of geological processes that spanned millions of years. Combined with human curiosity about immediate changes, the linking process had evolved far beyond what anyone had originally imagined. What began as temporary cooperation for military purposes had become permanent transformation. Humans who maintained their connection to Therolith found their lifespans extended dramatically. Dragons who worked with human partners gained the ability to adapt and learn at unprecedented speeds. Captain Wusung remained unlinked by choice. Someone needed to maintain perspective on what they were becoming. He watched the transformed members of his crew with a mixture of wonder and concern. They were still recognizably human, but they were also something more. "The fleet is requesting permission to land," he announced to the hybrid consciousness that had been Dr. Hana. She was still identifiable as an individual, but her awareness now encompassed perspectives that stretched from quantum mechanics to cosmic evolution. "Welcome them," she replied. Her voice carried harmonics that suggested vast spaces and deep time, but prepare them for what they will see. The transformation is not something that can be explained easily. More ships had been arriving daily as news of the victory spread through human space. Not just military vessels, but colonists and scientists and artists who wanted to be part of whatever was happening on the Dragon world. Some came seeking the life extension that linking with Therolith provided. Others were drawn by the technological advances that hybrid consciousness was producing daily. A few simply wanted to witness the birth of a new form of civilization. But the changes went deeper than anyone had expected. Children born to linked parents showed abilities that belonged to neither species originally. They could manipulate matter at the molecular level through direct mental contact. They communicated through forms of telepathy that transcended language entirely. They aged at rates somewhere between human and dragon timescales. "We're not just creating an alliance," Therolith observed during one of the planning sessions that now took place in shared mental space, rather than physical rooms. "We're becoming a new species entirely, something the galaxy has never seen before." The implications were staggering. For 3,000 years, the Harvesters had dominated the galaxy, through their ability to adapt faster than any organic species could evolve. But the human-dragon hybrid consciousness could change and learn at speeds that made even mechanical adaptation look slow. Within months, they were establishing colonies on other worlds. Not traditional settlements, but living cities that grew from seeds of crystallized consciousness. Each colony was connected to all the others through psychic networks that spanned interstellar distances instantaneously. The Harvesters tried to respond. Fleets that had been conquering the Outer Rim for centuries were recalled to deal with this new threat. But every engagement taught the hybrid consciousness new ways to fight, new strategies that combined human creativity with dragon power in ways their mechanical minds could not predict or counter. "They're withdrawing from the core systems," reported Lieutenant Kim Young-ho, who had become something like a spaceborne diplomat. His consciousness could interface directly with alien technology and communication systems. 17 different species have reported Harvester fleets abandoning territories they've held for decades. The retreat was not voluntary. For the first time in their mechanical existence, the Harvesters were facing something they could not defeat through superior adaptation. The hybrid consciousness evolved faster than they could analyze it. It found solutions to problems before the Harvesters even realized the problems existed. But victory in war was only the beginning. The real challenge was what to do with a galaxy that suddenly had room to breathe again. Species that had hidden in remote systems for centuries began emerging. Civilizations that had given up hope of ever being free started rebuilding. And all of them wanted to understand the alliance that had made freedom possible. "They're asking to join us," Engineer Song Minji reported from her position, coordinating diplomatic contacts. Her consciousness now spanned multiple star systems simultaneously. 43 different species have sent representatives requesting information about the linking process. The question of expansion became urgent. Could the hybrid consciousness incorporate other species, or was it limited to humans and dragons? Early experiments suggested that any sufficiently advanced biological species could participate in the network. But each addition changed the nature of the whole. A silicon-based species from the Vega system contributed crystalline memory structures that could store consciousness patterns for millions of years. An aquatic civilization from the Proxima colonies added fluid problem-solving approaches that enhanced the network's creativity exponentially. We're becoming something beyond individual species, Hannah realized as her awareness expanded to encompass perspectives from across known space. A meta-consciousness that includes multiple forms of life working together. But growth brought new challenges. How do you maintain individual identity when your consciousness spans multiple star systems? How do you make decisions when millions of minds are connected in permanent communion? How do you preserve what makes each species unique, while creating something greater than any of them alone? The solutions emerged gradually through the collective wisdom of the hybrid network. Consciousness flowed like water finding its level. Individual minds maintained their unique perspectives while contributing to collective understanding. Decisions emerged through consensus rather than authority, and at the center of it all, Theralith and Hannah maintained their original partnership. The ancient dragon who had slept for millennia, and the human explorer who had reached out with curious hands. Their bond anchored the growing network and provided stability as it expanded beyond anything either species had imagined possible. Years passed. The hybrid civilization established itself across hundreds of worlds. The harvesters retreated to the galaxy's edge and began evolving in new directions. Some chose to maintain their mechanical purity. Others began experimenting with biological components again for the first time in eons. "They're learning from us," Theralith observed, with something that might have been satisfaction. For beings that claim to represent perfection, they're showing remarkable willingness to change. The galaxy was entering a new age. Not dominated by any single species or alliance, but characterized by cooperation and mutual growth. The rigid boundaries between organic and artificial, individual and collective, mortal and eternal were dissolving into something far more flexible and creative. Hannah stood again on the observation deck of what had once been a research vessel, but was now a living ship grown from hybrid consciousness and crystalline technology. Through the transparent walls she could see the dragon world below. Cities of light stretched across continents that bloomed with gardens that grew in patterns too beautiful for any single mind to have imagined. "What have we become?" she asked through the network that now connected her to millions of other minds across the galaxy. The answer came not in words, but in understanding that flowed like music through her enhanced awareness. They had become possibility itself. The proof that intelligence and curiosity and the willingness to reach across the void between species could transcend any limitation. They had become the future that every exploring mind had dreamed of finding among the stars. The age of separation was ending. The age of connection had begun, and somewhere, in the deep cold between galaxies, ancient machines paused in their endless consumption and began to wonder if perhaps there might be a better way to exist among the infinite possibilities of the cosmos.